Hello again. It is sometimes said that a lie can be halfway around the world before the truth has even got its boots on, and nothing illustrates this old maxim better than the creation of black history in Britain. I know that I've spoken about this before, but so breathtaking are the deceit and lies which are behind this effort to distort and rewrite our history that I thought it worth running over just one aspect of the thing, since this October is, of course, Black History Month in Britain. Now, I reviewed this book the other day. It's called Important Sites in Black British History. It was only published a couple of weeks ago, just in time for Black History Month. I want to just draw your attention to two things. Firstly, there's a timeline here, and we read that Beachy Head Lady, the first black Briton known to us, was a woman of sub-Saharan African descent. And then if we skim on a little further, we find in Roman times, troops from Africa built Hadrian's Wall on the border between England and Scotland. These two things are now established facts as far as many people in Britain are concerned. And they've both found their way into not just this book, but many other books for children. And regularly, those lies are trotted out at schools. They are the foundation stones of the myth of black Romans in Britain. A few years ago, the museum in Eastbourne on the south coast of England started looking at some old skeletons that they had stored in the basement. One was radiocarbon dated to the Roman period, and then, for some reason, a supposed expert in identifying the racial origin of skulls was brought in. And as soon as she glanced at the skull of one woman, immediately told museum staff that this was a black person from sub-Saharan Africa. David Olusoga, in his book about black British history, mentions this. She didn't need to measure it. She looked at the skull and said, "Oh, that must be a black person from sub-Saharan Africa." It sounds a little bit weird, really, for an expert before she's even carried out any tests or taken any measurements, but there we are. She subsequently carried out various important measurements of the skull, which confirmed her in this belief, and a reconstruction was commissioned which showed a black woman from Africa. This may be seen in the thumbnail to this video. Enter Stayed Right, the BBC and David Olusoga. The BBC paid Olusoga to make a television programme about black British history, and he began in the Roman period with what has become known as the Beachy Head Lady, because the skeleton was found near Beachy Head on the English coast. In the description to this video, I give a link to a clip from this programme. It includes Mary Beard, the With It female historian, and none of those taking part are in any doubt that they have found the first black British person. The BBC even paid for a plaque to be put up in Sussex, claiming that the first sub-Saharan African lived there. And as I say, this nonsense has found its way into innumerable history books, and is always trotted out during Black History Month. This is how far back black history in Britain goes, right back to the time of the Romans. Eastbourne was really proud and excited to be able to claim to be the first multicultural place in Britain. And they then made the terrible mistake of trying to firm up this claim by sending DNA samples from the skeleton to the Francis Crick Institute to be sequenced, hoping to find exactly where in Africa this Roman woman had come from. Alas, this was when the fairy tale collapsed, for the results indicated that the woman had come not from Africa, but from southern Europe, most likely Cyprus. You will not see this embarrassing fact mentioned in many places. I only found out because I visited the museum at Beachy Head last year. The poster girl for black British history was a fraud, on the same level as Piltdown Man. I have never seen any apology from David Olusoga for this, but there we are. The idea that one can identify a black skeleton just by looking for a second at the skull did strike most of us as a bit absurd anyway. I've gone into the business of Hadrian's Wall too often to repeat it here. The fact is, there is literally no evidence whatsoever to suggest that anybody from sub-Saharan Africa lived in Britain at the time of the Romans. Literally no evidence, other than people looking at skulls and claiming them to belong to black people. The case of the Beachy Head Lady shows us just how reliable this method is. And yet, an awful lot of people in this country, those who have listened to David Olusoga and Mary Beard, for example, believe that black people have lived in Britain for 2,000 years. This belief is more akin to religious faith than a rational belief.